You won't believe what happened to me on my own property. I've lived on this 200-year-old ranch for years, raising my family, tending to the land, and cherishing every corner of it. But recently, everything changed. The HO, ailed by a woman. Everyone in town calls Karen, started pressuring me to sell. At first, I thought it was just petty complaints about fences or paint colors, the usual neighborhood drama. But it quickly escalated into something dangerous. One afternoon, what started as a tense conversation turned into a life-threatening encounter. She pulled a gun on me right there on my own land, just because I refused to sell. My heart was racing, my mind spinning, and for a moment, I thought this could be the end of my peaceful life on the ranch. The sheer audacity of it shook me to my core. How could someone go that far over a property dispute? But I wasn't about to back down. I knew I had to protect my family, my home, and the legacy of this land. What happened next completely changed everything. The confrontation turned into a battle of wits, strategy, and courage. And it forced me to make choices I never imagined I would have to make. In this video, I'm taking you behind the scenes of that shocking day. The threats, the standoff, and the fight to defend my ranch. You'll see exactly how a quiet life on a historic property spiraled into a dangerous showdown with the HOA, and just when it seemed like things couldn't get any worse. The situation took a turn that I never saw coming by the end of this story. You'll understand why standing your ground sometimes comes at a cost and how far some people will go when they think they can push you off what's yours. But the question remains, could I really take her down and keep my ranch? Or had the entire legacy of my family's land just been threatened forever? If you want, I can also write a punchy second-part hook that keeps viewers glued for the next video. Do you want me to do that? Before that day, I had no idea just how ruthless an HOA could be. For years, my ranch had been more than just a home, it was a piece of history. The original stone walls, the weathered barn, the oak trees planted generations ago, all carried memories I couldn't imagine letting go. Yet somehow, Karen saw it as an obstacle, something to push aside so she could satisfy her own plans. For the neighborhood, started noticing the subtle digs, complaints about my landscaping, letters about code violations, and surprise inspections that seemed designed to frustrate me. At first, I shrugged them off, thinking it was just petty bureaucracy. But soon, it became clear this was personal. I remember the first time she came onto the property, not with a smile, but with a kind of cold determination that made my skin crawl. She'd always been the type to enforce rules to the extreme, but this went beyond HOA authority. The more I refused to sell, the bolder she got, testing boundaries, trying to wear me down. My neighbors whispered warnings, but I never expected it would escalate to pulling a gun. It felt unreal a normal morning, turning into a nightmare in seconds. I also started digging into her past, trying to understand why she was so obsessed with my ranch. That's when I uncovered small but strange details, questionable property deals, rumors of intimidating other homeowners, even legal disputes where she seemed to push people out of their homes. Suddenly, it wasn't just about my land anymore. This was about power, control, and maybe even a grudge that had been simmering long before I ever moved here. As tension mounted, I realized I couldn't just react emotionally. Every move I made had to be calculated, every conversation documented. The stakes were higher than I imagined, and I could feel the noose tightening. The question became not just how to protect my ranch, but how to survive encounters with someone willing to cross every line. The next encounter was inevitable, and deep down, I knew it would change everything. But what I didn't know was just how far she would go and whether I could outsmart her before it was too late. If you want, I can draft the third part, where the first major showdown begins, keeping viewers on the edge of their seats without violating policy. Do you want me to do that? Things started spiraling quickly after that first confrontation. Karen wasn't subtle anymore. Encounter felt like a calculated move, designed to test my patience and push me toward selling. I began noticing her showing up at town meetings, subtly undermining me, spreading stories about supposed hazards on my property. Even neighbors who had been friendly suddenly seemed hesitant to speak up, afraid of getting on her bad side. It was clear she had built a network of influence, and I was suddenly trapped in a game I hadn't signed up for. Meanwhile, life on the ranch had to continue. I still had chores, animals to care for, and the day-to-day demands that come with a historic property. But now, every creak of the barn, every knock at the door, felt like it could be her, checking if I was cracking. I started keeping detailed records of every interaction, photographing the property daily, and even installing extra security cameras. The ranch, once a peaceful refuge, now felt like a battleground. Adding to the tension, a few longtime neighbors started sharing their own stories. One mentioned how Karen had forced a family to sell a property decades ago under pressure. Another talked about her reputation for manipulating HOA rules to intimidate people. It made me realize this wasn't just a personal fight, it was a pattern. But even knowing that, it didn't make facing her any less terrifying. Then there were the subtle psychological games. Notes left on my door, sudden inspections. Her showing up unannounced while smiling as if nothing was wrong was all calculated to throw me off balance. I started questioning every decision I made, wondering if she had allies everywhere. Every day brought new threats. And the ranch felt like it was shrinking under the weight of her presence. I knew I had to respond. But how do you face someone who will stop at nothing without making a mistake that could cost you everything? The stakes were climbing, and the next move would decide whether my family's legacy stayed intact or slipped away forever. I can continue with the next part, where the tension peaks and the first real showdown begins, keeping the audience on edge. Do you want me to write that? The days leading up to the final confrontation felt like walking on a tightrope over a canyon. Every time I stepped outside, I felt her eyes on me, her presence looming over the ranch like a storm cloud. Even my own family noticed the tension. Dinners were quieter, conversations shorter, and the usual laughter on the porch replaced by wary glances toward the driveway. The ranch, once a sanctuary, has become a place where every shadow seemed to hide a threat. I started noticing more signs of her manipulation. Doors left slightly ajar, small accidents in the yard. Strange messages slipped under the door, designed to make me doubt myself and weaken my resolve. It was psychological warfare, and I had to fight not just to protect the land, but to maintain my sanity. At night, I would lie awake, thinking through every scenario, imagining the worst, planning my next move. I knew she was watching, waiting for a misstep, and the tension was suffocating. Neighbors began whispering rumors that made my blood boil. Some implied that I might give in under pressure, that the historic ranch would be lost if I didn't comply. But others quietly offered support, leaving notes of encouragement or subtle warnings about Karen's tactics. It felt like a chess game, each move critical, each observer either friend or foe. The day everything came to a head started like any other, but the signs were everywhere. The air felt heavier, the wind seemed sharper, and even the animals were restless. I saw her. Car parked down the lane, a silent signal that she was planning something. My heart raced as I prepared myself mentally for what I knew was an inevitable confrontation that could decide the fate of the ranch and everything I had fought to protect. I took a deep breath, knowing that once this moment arrived, there would be no turning back. Every choice I had made led to this point, and now the tension had reached a breaking point. The next moments would be a test of courage, strategy, and willpower. I can write the climactic section next, where the standoff unfolds and suspense reaches its peak without violating policy. Do you want me to do that? Just when I thought I had a handle on the situation, things took a shocking turn. As I approached the edge of the property, I noticed something unusual: tracks in the dirt that didn't match any of our vehicles or the usual farm equipment. Someone had been there recently, moving around the ranch under the cover of night. My heart sank. Was Karen escalating beyond intimidation? Or was there someone else involved? The uncertainty made every step feel heavier, and the tension in the air was almost tangible. Then came the call that shook me to the core. A neighbor I trusted reached out, whispering that Karen wasn't acting alone. She had allegedly partnered with outside investors looking to buy up historic properties in the area, and my ranch had suddenly become their prime target. This revelation changed everything. It wasn't just about a local HOA conflict anymore. It was about protecting a legacy against people who had no regard for history, family, or land. The stakes had skyrocketed overnight. I could feel the weight of generations pressing down on me. Every creak of the barn, every rustle of the old oak trees reminded me what I was fighting for. And yet, with each passing hour, the sense of urgency grew. Every message, every unannounced visit from Karen now carried a hidden threat. I had to stay alert, strategize, and anticipate moves that seemed almost impossible to predict. Even my family started noticing the strain. Late at night, I'd catch glimpses of worry in their eyes, the same worry I felt myself. It wasn't just about defending property, it was about keeping everyone safe while standing my ground against someone willing to push every boundary. I realized I was no longer just facing Karen. I was facing a web of calculated manipulation and hidden alleys. And just as I began preparing for the inevitable confrontation, I discovered something buried on the ranch, something that could change everything about the fight ahead. The question now wasn't just whether I could protect my home, but whether I could survive the twists and traps ahead. I can continue with the next section, where the suspense peaks and the first intense showdown starts to unfold. Do you want me to write that the day of the confrontation arrived and the tension was unbearable? Karen showed up unannounced, her usual icy smile hiding the rage I knew was simmering beneath the surface. I had spent the night preparing, going over every detail, anticipating every move she might make. The ranch, usually calm and alive, with the sounds of animals and wind through the trees, felt like a battlefield. Every step she took toward the house made my pulse race. She tried to push me again, using threats and manipulation, but I stood my ground. I calmly documented everything, keeping a record of her actions while calling in a mediator and alerting a few trusted neighbors. I refused to be cornered. The standoff felt endless, every word and gesture loaded with tension. But just when it seemed like the confrontation might spiral out of control, Karen made a misstep, revealing her plan to pressure me into selling by leveraging the outside investors. That gave me the opening I needed. I confronted her with the evidence I had gathered, exposing her tactics and alliances to everyone present. The power dynamic shifted instantly. Karen's allies began to back away, and the momentum of intimidation crumbled. It was a turning point. I had successfully protected my ranch, my family, and the legacy of generations who had built and cared for this land. The immediate threat was neutralized, and a sense of relief washed over me. But just as I thought the ordeal was over, a new, unexpected twist emerged. Among the old papers I had discovered on the ranch days before, there was a document that revealed someone else had been quietly monitoring the property for decades, a hidden claim that could complicate ownership and the future of the ranch. The fight wasn't entirely over, and a new mystery now loomed over the land I had fought so hard to protect. I realized then that even victories carry shadows. And sometimes the past has a way of resurfacing when you least expect it. My ranch was safe for now, but the story was far from finished. After the chaos settled, life on the ranch slowly returned to a sense of normalcy, but it wasn't the same as before. I spent days going through the old documents I had found, uncovering details about past owners, hidden easements, and historical protections that actually strengthened my claim to the property. It was a relief to realize that the land I loved so dearly was legally secure, even if the past had tried to complicate it. That unexpected twist reminded me how important it is to know the full story behind the place you call home. Karen, on the other hand, retreated from the neighborhood. Without her allies and exposed tactics, she lost the power she had wielded over the HOA. Neighbors began speaking more openly again, sharing stories and memories about the ranch and its history. I even discovered allies I hadn't expected, people who quietly supported me all along, who admired my determination to protect the property. It made me appreciate the community in a whole new way. And I realized that standing up for what's right doesn't just preserve a home. It can strengthen connections with the people around you. The ranch itself seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. The barns, the oak trees, the stone walls, they were still standing, just as they had for generations. Life resumed its natural rhythm: chores, livestock, and quiet evenings on the porch. But the experience left me more vigilant, more aware of the forces that can threaten what you hold dear, and more grateful for the history I was entrusted to protect. Looking back, the ordeal taught me several lessons. Courage isn't about fighting recklessly. It's about standing firm, planning carefully, and protecting the legacy that matters most. While the threats may have passed for now, the story of the ranch hand, the fight to preserve it, remains a reminder that some things are worth defending no matter the cost. My 200-year-old ranch survived, and so did my resolve, leaving a legacy stronger than any intimidation could ever break.